The alley was quiet, too quiet for what had just happened. Rain hissed against the cracked pavement, steam rising from the hood of a still-smoking car. Blood was drying on Angelo Moretti's knuckles as he stepped over the body of a man who had made one bad promise too many. He was halfway to the black sedan when he heard it, soft, short, like a breath with a question. Not a meow, not a whimper, something in between. He paused, eyes narrowing. Came again. A faint, chirping sound, high and quick. He turned toward the shadows behind the dumpster. There, tucked in the corner where the brick wall met the broken crates, was something so small it barely looked real. A tiny gray creature, soaked through, shaking hard. Its fur clung tight to its frame. Its ears were too big for its head. Its eyes too round, too black, too calm. It stared straight at him. Not scared, not blinking, just waiting. Angelo took a step forward. The creature didn't move. He crouched, resting one blood-streaked hand on his knee, the other slowly stretching out. "You lost, kid?" he muttered. It made that same soft chirp. Didn't flinch. He reached out and scooped it into his palm. No resistance. No claws. Just bones and wet fur and silence. He studied it. No tag. No collar. No fear. "Damn thing's not even big as a fist," he said, standing. He glanced around. No sound but the rain. He looked down again. The thing blinked, once, then tucked its face into his hand. He didn't plan to keep it. Didn't plan to feel anything. But something in him shifted. Maybe it was the stillness. Maybe the way it looked at him like it understood. He slipped it inside his coat, next to the gun. And without another word, he walked to the car. "Hi, my amazing friends and family. Welcome back to another story for today. If you are ready to enjoy this heartwarming story, smash the subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. I love seeing all your names and places. Also, don't forget to check out more of our interesting videos on the channel. And guess what? Tomorrow, I have got an even more exciting story to share with you that I know you'll love. Now back to the story. The black sedan purred low as Angelo Moretti slid behind the wheel. Rain tapped the windshield like fingers playing a quiet drumbeat. Smoke from the wreck still curled into the sky behind him. He didn't look back. He never did. The tiny thing was curled up in the inside pocket of his long coat, just beneath his chest. Barely a weight, barely a breath. It didn't move, but he could feel it warm and alive against him. He lit a cigarette with one hand. The flame flickered, caught his eyes in the mirror. Still sharp, still cold, but something had changed. He didn't know what, and he didn't like that. As the car rolled through the wet streets of the city, neon lights smeared across the glass like bruises. The alley was behind him now, forgotten by most, but not by him. Not tonight. He reached into his coat. His hand found fur, damp and soft. The creature didn't make a sound, just pressed closer. "Got you out of that dump?" Angelo muttered, eyes on the road. "Don't make me regret it." Back at the estate, the gates opened without a word. The guards didn't ask questions. They never did. Not if they wanted to keep their teeth. The rain was heavier now, hissing on the hood of the car like it was trying to get in. Angelo stepped out, coat tight against him, and walked straight inside. No one saw what he held. That was important. Inside the mansion, it was quiet. Too quiet. He passed the grand staircase, the heavy oil paintings, the table still stained from last week's meeting that ended with a shattered wine glass and 2 broken ribs. His footsteps didn't echo. They never did. In the study, he shut the door and locked it. Only then did he pull the creature out. He unwrapped his coat, slow and careful, like he was holding a bomb or a secret. Maybe both. It blinked up at him. Those eyes were unreal. So round. So dark. They didn't shine. They swallowed the light. It didn't hiss, didn't cry, just watched. Angelo cursed under his breath. "What are you?" He set it down on the thick rug by the fireplace. Stood, shaky legs trying to hold it up. Then it sat, stared. He poured a glass of something brown and strong. Sat in the leather chair across from it. They looked at each other for a long time. The creature didn't flinch. Neither did he. An hour passed. Maybe more. Rain still tapped the windows like it was trying to say something. The fire snapped. The ice in his glass melted. The kitten finally moved. It walked. No, glided. Quiet and slow across the rug. Its legs looked too thin to hold it. But they did. It reached the edge of his shoe and stopped. Looked up. Angelo raised an eyebrow. "You hungry?" It blinked once. He stood, walked to the mini fridge. Grabbed a bowl. Warmed some milk. He wasn't sure why. It just felt right. He set the bowl down on the floor. The creature didn't rush it. Just walked over and sniffed. Then, with tiny, precise licks, it drank. It didn't lap like a normal cat. It sipped, like it was savoring. Angelo watched, glass in one hand, gun holstered on his hip. The two sides of him always balanced. This thing, it didn't belong in his world. But neither did he, if you asked right. After it drank, it curled into the flannel cloth he tossed near the fire. Still no meow, no sound, just that same calm breathing. He moved closer, knelt beside it, reached out one finger. It didn't bite, didn't run. It leaned into the touch. Soft, almost too soft. "You're not a street cat," he whispered. "Someone tossed you, or maybe you crawled here. But either way, you're mine now." He stared at it. It stared back. And something in his chest, something buried and scarred, shifted. He hadn't felt that in years. Later that night, he laid on the leather couch, coat off, shirt undone. The creature was curled into the space between his neck and shoulder, fast asleep. It didn't snore, didn't twitch, just tiny, steady breaths. He kept a gun on the coffee table and his phone face down. He didn't want to be disturbed. The fire burned low. Rain kept whispering. In the stillness, he whispered, "Whisk." He didn't know where the name came from. It just fit. He said it again, softer. The creature's ears twitched. His fingers stroked the small head gently. "Whisk," he said. "Yeah, you'll do." Around 2 in the morning, he woke up. But not because of a sound. Because of the silence. Whisk was gone from his shoulder. Angelo sat up slow. Looked around. The fire had died down to embers. The room was dim, shadows thick. Then he saw it. Perched on the back of the couch. Just inches from his head. Whisk. Staring. Still. Eyes glinting, not with light, but with something else. Tilted its head once. Then blinked. Then chirped. Angelo's blood went cold for half a second. That sound. It wasn't a cat sound. It wasn't like anything he knew. Just like in the alley. Short. Sharp. A sound that didn't belong. He didn't move. Whisk crawled down the back of the couch and curled beside him again. Like nothing had happened. He laid back. But his eyes didn't close. Not yet. At sunrise, he woke to tapping on the door. "Boss," came a voice. Angelo didn't answer at first. He was too busy watching Whisk bat at the flannel cloth. Gentle. Graceful. "Boss." The voice tried again. "Nico needs you downstairs. The guys from Detroit just arrived." Angelo picked up Whisk in one hand. It let him. He opened the door with the other. His guard blinked. Angelo's face was stone. "Speak of this," he said softly, "and you won't speak again." The guard nodded fast, eyes locked on the tiny creature in his boss's hand. Whisk blinked once at the man, then turned away. By noon, Angelo was in his office, barking orders, drawing lines, and signing silence with blood. But even as his men fought over guns and power, his mind kept drifting. Back to those black eyes. Back to that chirp. Back to that calm, eerie stillness. He glanced down at his coat. Whisk peeked out from inside. Still silent. Still watching. And for the first time in a long, long time, Angelo Moretti didn't know if he had found something broken, or if something dangerous had found him. The fire was out, but the study still held the smell of smoke and old whiskey. The room was quiet, but not the empty kind of quiet. It was the kind that waited, the kind that watched, the kind that breathed even when no one else did. Angelo Moretti sat back in his chair, the weight of his coat heavy across his lap, the kitten tucked beneath it like a secret no one could touch. Whisk, that was the name now, and somehow it already felt like it had always been. The little creature hadn't moved in 10 minutes. Just laid there, eyes half closed, not blinking. Still, warm, breathing but not like a normal kitten. Each breath was soft, timed, like a clock counting seconds only it could hear. Angelo reached into his coat, pulled it out slow. It didn't resist. He set Whisk on the polished oak desk, next to the glass of untouched whiskey and a folder with names that were already marked for death. Whisk stretched. Its limbs moved like silk in water. Then it sat, just like that, perfect posture, watching him. Never seen a cat sit like a priest before, Angelo muttered. The kitten tilted its head. Did it understand? He couldn't tell. He reached for a clean handkerchief from the drawer, dipped it in warm water, and wiped the damp fur gently. It didn't squirm, didn't hiss. It just allowed him to touch it, like it had known his hands before they ever met. The fur dried fast, short and smooth, a soft shade of gray that caught the desk lamp like smoke lit by moonlight. And those ears, too big, too sharp, they twitched once, then stilled again. You're not a street thing, he whispered, folding the cloth. No alley rat could ever grow this calm. Whisk chirped, that same sound, the one that didn't belong in the city or in the woods or in this world. A note so clean it cut through the air. Angelo stared. The hairs on his arms rose like grass before a storm. He stood, walked to the old kitchen behind the study, poured milk into a shallow crystal ashtray. He didn't have a bowl, and he wasn't about to ask anyone. He placed the dish down on the rug near the fireplace and stepped back. Whisk walked over slowly. No sound, no paw pads tapping. It bent its head, then drank, not like a kitten. No lapping, no slurping. It sipped, measured, controlled. It was drinking like it was thinking, like every drop needed permission to be taken. Angelo watched in silence. The firelight flicked again, catching the edges of Whisk's eyes. No glow, no shine, just pure, full black, like a well with no bottom. A knock came, one short, one long. His signal. Angelo moved fast, slid Whisk into the inner coat pocket and closed the top. The creature didn't make a sound. He cracked the door just enough. Nico stood there, the only man allowed to knock without dying. Shipment came early, Nico said, voice low. Boxes are already being sorted. Angelo nodded once. Any problems? Not yet. Nico glanced past him, eyes skimming the dark behind the boss. His mouth moved like he wanted to ask something, but didn't. Good choice. Tell them to check every crate. If something doesn't match the list, it disappears. Quietly, Nico nodded and stepped back into the hall. Angelo shut the door again, slow. When he looked down, Whisk was already crawling back out. The kitten blinked up at him like it hadn't been hidden at all. Like it knew how to stay silent before it even learned how to speak. Hours passed. Angelo didn't sleep. The mansion moved through its night rhythm. Guards shifted posts. Cameras blinked in the dark. Deals waited until sunrise. But the study stayed lit. And inside it, the most dangerous man in the city sat still, holding a kitten to his chest like it was made of smoke and dreams. Whisk didn't purr, didn't twitch, just stayed. Right under his chin, curled like a question without an answer. At 3 in the morning, Angelo heard a whispering scratch at the door. Soft. Soft enough that only someone awake in total silence could hear it. He didn't move. Not yet. His hand slid to the gun under the couch cushion. He waited. Scratch. Then silence again. He stood slowly, keeping Whisk tucked in one arm. Opened the door. No one there. Just the hallway light flickering once. He looked both ways. Then shut the door. Turned the lock. Looked down. Whisk was staring at the hallway like it had seen something that didn't need to exist. The kitten's pupils were wide. Wide enough to swallow its eyes. Then, for the first time, it growled. But it was so quiet, so soft. Angelo almost thought he imagined it. Just before sunrise, he made it a bed. A carved cigar box, lined with a silk handkerchief and the flannel he had wrapped it in on the first night. He placed it near the fireplace. Whisk sniffed it, then stepped inside. Curled tight, but didn't close its eyes. Still watching, always watching. He poured another drink. Didn't sip it, just watched the fire. The file on the desk stayed closed. Whisk stayed in the box. Neither of them moved much. And yet the room didn't feel still. Felt like it was holding something. Like something new had arrived. Something quiet. Something deep. Something he didn't have a name for. By the time the rest of the house woke up, Angelo was still in the study. Still staring into the fire. Still feeling that tiny heartbeat pressed against his ribs. And still wondering what kind of creature lets itself be saved, when it might have been the one doing the saving all along. The morning came quiet. The fire was dead, but the coals still glowed faint under a soft blanket of ash. The light creeping through the study windows was pale and tired, like it hadn't slept either. Angelo hadn't moved much. He'd watched the kitten all night, watched the way it stared at shadows, watched the way it sat still for too long, watched how it never once closed its eyes unless his did first. Whisk, still curled inside the cigar box, but awake. Always awake. By the time the kitchen clattered with pans and guards shuffled into place, Angelo had already dressed in black. No tie, no smile. He scooped Whisk into one arm and slipped him into the inside of his coat. The creature didn't make a sound. It just nestled into the fabric like it was born there. He stepped out into the hallway, steps soft, steady. The guards stiffened when they saw him, as always. But today, something else passed between them. Their eyes flicked to the coat, just for a second, then back to their shoes. Down in the West Hall, where the walls were marble and the floor echoed every footstep, Nico was waiting. He stood with his arms crossed, his face carved from something rough. A scar ran from his left ear to the corner of his jaw. That scar had a story. So did Nico. He was the one who knew things before others. The one who saw things most ignored. Angelo walked past him without a word. But Nico's eyes followed the coat. He cleared his throat. "Boss," he said low. "You still got that thing on you?" Angelo paused. "Thing? That cat. Or whatever it is. It's called Whisk." Nico's brow tightened. "Yeah, I've seen it. Been watching." Angelo turned. His face was calm, but still. "What did you see?" Nico shrugged slowly. "It don't blink." Angelo said nothing. Nico scratched his beard. "Last night I came up to drop the files. Didn't knock. Just waited at the door. Then I saw it. Through the glass." He paused. Angelo waited. "That thing walked sideways, boss. along the wall, not on the floor, the marble wall, like gravity meant nothing. Silence stretched between them. Angelo's voice came soft. "You sure?" Nico nodded once. "I know what I saw, and I ain't the only one." By noon, the whispers had started. Not loud, not stupid, just soft, slippery, the kind that slid under doors and crawled through cracks. I saw it blink, I swear, just once. But the other eye moved before the first. It chirped when I walked past, but like it was calling someone. Cats don't move like that. One of the younger men, Leo, made the mistake of joking. He walked into the break room, chewing on a toothpick, talking too loud for the room. Anyone else think the boss brought home a demon cat? The silence hit him like a slap. No one laughed. One guy got up and left without touching his coffee. Another pretended not to hear. Leo swallowed. The toothpick snapped between his teeth. Later that day, Angelo brought Whisk into the East Wing. He had meetings, talks, things that needed silence and threat and the right kind of stare. Whisk stayed curled inside his coat. But when the guards opened the main doors, Whisk made a sound. A soft click. Not a meow. Not a hiss. Clicking noise. Fast and short like a camera shutter. Or a lock snapping shut. The men holding the doors stiffened. Whisk poked its head out. Didn't blink. Didn't purr. Just looked. One of the men stepped back without meaning to. The other swallowed hard and kept still. Angelo didn't look at them, but he felt it. Felt the tension in the air shift. Felt how the room changed when Whisk stared at people. Like it could see things they didn't want seen. He sat in the meeting. Quiet. Calm. The men across the table talked business. Guns. Routes. Hands dirty with deals. But Angelo wasn't listening. He was watching Whisk crawl out from his coat and perch on his shoulder. The kitten sat like a statue. Didn't blink. Didn't move. Just stared. Straight at the man sitting across from Angelo. That man began to sweat. His words stumbled. He lost his train of thought. Whisk clicked again. That same sharp sound. And the man shut his mouth. Angelo raised an eyebrow. Something wrong. The man shook his head. No, sir. Just distracted. Angelo smiled. The kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. That night, back in the study, he placed Whisk back in the cigar box. Lit the fire again. Sat in his chair with a glass in one hand and silence in the other. Whisk didn't curl this time. He sat up, staring at the flames. Not blinking, just breathing. Angelo leaned back, eyes on the creature. You see things I don't you? He whispered. Whisk clicked. Once. Then lowered its head and rested. 3 a.m. A guard screamed in the West Hall. Angelo was already on his feet, gun in hand, coat flying behind him. He opened the door. Nico was there first. The guard who screamed was shaking. Not bleeding, not hurt, just pale. What happened? Angelo asked. The man pointed. The thing. It was in the hallway. I saw it. I swear it was watching me through the glass. And then it just vanished. Angelo frowned. Vanished. I looked again, and it was gone. No sound. No step. Just gone. Angelo turned. Back in his study, Whisk was curled in the cigar box. Eyes half closed. Looking very much like it had never moved. By the end of the week, the house had changed. No one walked too fast near the study. No one knocked without cause. No one joked anymore. Whisk had become more than a pet. More than a rumor. It was a shadow that followed the most feared man in the city. And no one could look at it for too long. Not without feeling like it saw straight through their skin. But Angelo? He felt something else. He felt a bond. A thread. A quiet pull. Whisk didn't ask for anything. Didn't beg. didn't demand. It simply existed. And somehow that was enough. More than enough. One evening, he sat with Nico by the fireplace. 2 glasses. 2 chairs. Silence between them. Until Nico said, "Lo, you ever think maybe that thing found you, boss? Not the other way around." Angelo looked into the fire. Didn't answer for a long time. Then said, almost too soft to hear, "Every day." The fire had turned to glowing coals. The mansion slept under thick velvet silence. Nico had gone. His glass left half full. His boots were quiet on the marble as he walked out. Angelo stayed in the study, one hand resting on the arm of his chair, the other idly stroking Whisk's fur. The kitten sat on his lap. Not asleep. Never asleep. It just stared at the fire like it was remembering something it had seen before. Something it wasn't supposed to. An hour passed. Maybe 2. The flames burned low. Shadows leaned in close. Then came the phone call. Short. Urgent. One of Angelo's safe houses hit. 6 men down. 2 trucks on fire. More coming. He didn't panic. He stood up calm, coat already in his hands, gun tucked at his waist. His heart didn't race, but something in him shifted. A cold hum, a silence that meant war. He looked down at Whisk. The creature was already standing, eyes wide, ears raised, body still. "You're coming with me," he muttered. The car cut through the rain. The sky looked bruised. The streetlights blinked like they were nervous. Whisk sat on the seat beside Angelo. No box, no leash, no noise. It didn't look scared. It looked ready. The closer they got, the stranger it acted. Pressed its tiny paw to the window once. Not hard, just rested it there. Its ears turned slightly. Then it clicked. That sound again, like a lock snapping shut inside the walls. Angelo's safe house was on the edge of the city. A tall, gray building tucked behind warehouses and old train lines. It wasn't meant to be found. But someone found it. And someone wanted to make a point. When they pulled up, smoke curled from the roof. One car lay on its side, burning slow, headlights cracked and blinking like dying eyes. Nico's voice barked through the radio, rough and tight. "They're still inside. 2 shooters left. Possibly more in the back." Angelo didn't wait. He stepped out. Rain hit his shoulders. Gun in one hand. He turned to Whisk. "Open the door." "Stay." Whisk stared at him, then blinked once. Angelo didn't know why, but the command didn't feel necessary. Whisk already knew. Inside the building, the air was thick. Smoke, gunpowder, blood. The hallway was streaked with wet footprints and broken glass. Angelo walked in slow, boots crushing bits of shell casings. His men moved like ghosts behind him. Quiet, sharp, deadly. A body slumped against the stairwell. Shot in the back. Nico appeared beside him, face drawn. They came in fast. Knew where to hit. Pushed through the north wall. That ain't normal. Angelo's eyes were ice. Where are they now? 2nd floor. West Hall. Might be holding someone. Angelo nodded. Then clicked his radio off. Silent from here. He moved up the stairs, slow but without pause. Each corner checked. Each step steady. On the 2nd floor, the hallway was lit only by the glow of a flickering light. Then a shot cracked through the dark. Angelo ducked fast, pressed to the wall. One of his men returned fire. Another shouted. In the chaos, none of them noticed what crawled from the stairwell behind. Whisk. Tiny pause. No sound. It moved with grace that didn't match its size. Slipping past blood. Past bodies. Past smoke. Not in panic. In purpose. When the gunfire stopped, 3 men were dead. One still breathed. Barely. He lay on his side near the end of the hallway, gasping. Angelo stepped over the wreckage, gun still hot in his hand. He looked down at the man, then froze. Whisk was already there. The kitten stood inches from the dying man's face. Still, silent, his head tilted slightly, ears twitched, eyes locked on the man's. The man coughed blood, tried to speak. Whisk made a sound. Not a chirp, not a click, something lower. A hum. The man's eyes widened. He gasped. One last time, then fell still. No twitch, no fight, just stillness. Whisk didn't move. Angelo stared. His men stood behind him, silent. No one said a word. They all saw it. They all felt it. Whisk had done nothing. But something had passed between the kitten and that dying man. Something unseen. And whatever it was, it had ended a breath. Angelo picked Whisk up slowly, held him in one hand. The kitten turned to look at him. Calm, eyes wide, not afraid, not curious, just watching. You're not a normal thing, Angelo whispered. Are you? Whisk blinked once. The silence in the hallway thickened. Rain hit the broken windows. Somewhere in the distance, sirens called like ghosts. Angelo turned, walked past the bodies, walked down the stairs, walked back into the night, Whisk in his arms, and a feeling in his chest like something had just stepped into his world, something he would never be able to step away from again. The city lights faded behind him. Angelo drove with one hand on the wheel and the other resting lightly over the soft bundle curled against his ribs. Whisk hadn't moved. Not since they left the blood-soaked hallway. Not since that last breath faded from the dying man's lips. The car hummed low. Street signs blurred. The sky was thick with clouds like soaked wool. Inside the coat, Whisk was still. Not asleep. Never asleep. Just waiting. They didn't go back to the mansion. Angelo didn't even call Nico. He just kept driving. Turning corners he hadn't turned in years. Taking roads no one dared to follow. Not even his own men. The vet's place wasn't on any map. It was a whisper behind a locked door, buried in the back alley of a laundromat that hadn't washed clothes in over 2 decades. The metal door had no handle. Only a code panel and a cracked lens camera that looked like an extra I glued to the bricks. Angelo leaned close. Petrov. It's me. A pause. Then a buzz. The door clicked open. No words. No greetings. Just silence thick enough to chew on. Inside was cold. Sterile metal walls. Yellow lights that made everyone look a little sick. The hallway smelled like alcohol and dust and things that were once alive. At the far end stood a short man in a long gray coat, gloves already on, eyes sharp behind old glasses. Dr. Oleg Petrov, ex-military, ex-scientist, ex-something no one dared ask about. He knew things, fixed things, hid things, for a price. Angelo had paid that price once. And never forgot what the man could do. You're early, Petrov said, voice flat as glass. You didn't know I was coming, Angelo answered. Petrov raised one eyebrow, which makes it even more impressive. They entered the exam room. No windows, one light, a steel table in the middle. It looked more like a room made for interrogation than healing. Angelo unbuttoned his coat, reached in. Petrov leaned forward, curious but cautious. Then Angelo pulled Whisk out, held him up, cradled under the arms like a child. Petrov took one step back. His eyes narrowed behind the lenses. What is that? A kitten, Angelo said. Whisk blinked once. Petrov didn't blink at all. He didn't reach for it right away. He walked slowly around the table, gesturing for Angelo to place it down. Whisk sat on the metal, paws tucked under, tail curled neatly, not scared, not curious, just still. Petrov bent close. No collar, No chip. No vet record? You're the first. Petrov adjusted his gloves. His fingers hovered just above Whisk's ears, then touched. Gently. Whisk didn't move. The vet checked the skull, felt along the spine, pressed 2 fingers under the chin. A sound that meant nothing good. Then he touched the legs, bending one gently, tilting the paw. His fingers slid across the pads. Stopped. Then he pressed lightly against the tiny paw's center, and out came a claw. Sharp, clean, too long, too smooth. Petrov froze. That's not right. He tried the other paw. Same thing. But this one flicked out faster. He stepped back. Retractable claws like that? Not at this age. Not at that size. Whisk turned its head slowly, looked up at him, then chirped. That soft, strange, dry sound. Petrov dropped the pen he didn't even realize he was holding, clattered to the floor and rolled under the cabinet. The vet's face turned pale. He swallowed, took off his gloves, put them back on, then leaned in again, this time lifting one of Whisk's eyelids with a swab. He stared, then did it again on the other eye. Angelo watched, arms crossed. What is it? Petrov didn't answer. He looked at the tail, ran a scanner across the back. Nothing beeped. No chip. No signature. No trace. Then finally he spoke. Where did you get this? Alley. Petrov stared at him. You found this in an alley? Right behind my club. In the rain. Just sitting there. The vet shook his head. Slow. That's not a kitten. Angelo didn't move. Didn't even blink. Then what is it? Petrov stepped back. It's not from here. A silence fell between them like a curtain. The room felt colder. Petrov crossed to a drawer, pulled out a file, laid it on the counter. Inside were photos. Black and white. Grainy. Old. One showed something small. For ears, tail. But the eyes. They were wrong. Too big. Too dark. Just like Whisk's. I saw one once, Petrov said. Years ago. Not in this country. Not even above ground. Came in pieces. Frozen. Smuggled through military crates. They thought it was a genetic experiment. He tapped the photo. Hybrid. Not natural. Not legal. What kind of hybrid? Angelo asked. Part feline, maybe. Part something else. Something quiet. Something smart. Built for observation. Maybe more. Angelo looked at Whisk. The kitten was still sitting there. Ears perked. Eyes locked. Tail flicking once. Petrov whispered. It was made for something. That's not a pet. That's a tool. A weapon. A shadow dressed like an animal. Angelo moved closer. Placed a hand gently on Whisk's head. The kitten leaned into his touch. Soft. Still. Nothing violent. Nothing wild. Doesn't feel like a weapon, Angelo said. Petrov looked at him. Not yet. He started putting things away. Fast. Nervous. You need to get rid of it. Why? Because things like that don't stay small. They grow. Fast. And when they grow, they remember. Angelo didn't answer. He just picked Whisk up. Cradled him like glass. The kitten looked up at him. A single click echoed from its throat. As Angelo walked back out through the cold hallway, Petrov called after him. Angelo, listen to me. He stopped but didn't turn. That thing in your coat? It's not your friend. Angelo looked down. Whisk blinked, then closed its eyes for the first time. Soft, peaceful. I don't think you know what kind of friend I've had before, Angelo said. Then he stepped out into the night. Rain was falling again, and in the dark, Whisk purred for the very first time. The rain had followed them all the way back. By the time Angelo reached the mansion, the sky was pouring hard. Sheets of water slapped the windshield as if the night itself was trying to wash something away. Inside his coat, Whisk was silent. Warm. Curled tight against his chest like a beating secret. Angelo gripped the wheel a little harder. The road stretched ahead, slick with reflections and lies. Petrov's words echoed in his skull. It's not a kitten. It was made for something. Get rid of it. But as the car rolled through the iron gates and into the belly of his empire, Angelo already knew one thing. He wasn't letting Whisk go. Not yet. Not until he knew everything. The study lights flickered awake as he stepped inside. The fire hadn't been lit. The room felt colder than usual. He dropped the coat on the couch. Whisk hopped out with a soft plop, tail curling behind it like a ribbon made of smoke. The kitten padded across the rug, paused, and sat, calm, watching, always watching. Angelo didn't say a word. He went straight to the drawer behind the bookshelf, pulled out the black case. Slim, locked. Inside was a drive. He plugged it into the hidden port beneath the desk. The screen hummed to life. Every alley around his club, every back door, every roof, all recorded, all backed up. He typed the date. The night he found Whisk. The night everything started to turn. First there was nothing. Rain falling, rats scuttling, empty crates. Then movement. A figure, hooded, fast. From the shadows, they walked straight into the frame behind the club dumpster. They held something, small. A box, cardboard, plain, damp already from the rain. The figure knelt, placed it gently on the ground, half hidden beneath the crates. Then they stood, turned, paused, looked directly at the security camera. Only for 1 second, but enough. Then they vanished. Angelo leaned closer. The timestamp blinked. 6 minutes before he arrived. He felt the anger climb his spine like ice. Not hot, not loud, cold, sharp. Someone had put Whisk there. Not by mistake, not by chance. He had been played. And that thought curled his hands into fists. He slowed the footage, paused it on the face, or what should have been a face. The figure wore a mask, tight, fabric, dark, but the eyes showed, barely. He zoomed in, not much, but enough to see. The height, the way they moved, the slight limp in the left leg. He had seen that walk before. He tapped a few keys, pulled up access logs, camera hits, movement patterns. The figure had passed through the loading bay 3 days before the night of the drop, pretending to be a delivery runner. But they had gone right past the normal doors, straight to the side lot. Angelo stared at the data, then his eyes narrowed. One of his own men had patrol duty in that lot that night. Only one. Marco. Marco had been with him for 6 years. Clean record. Loyal. Sharp. But quiet. Too quiet sometimes. Angelo leaned back in his chair. Breath slow. Mind spinning. He stood. Walked to the cabinet. Poured a glass of something strong and bitter. Didn't drink it. Just held it. Whisk was sitting by the fire now, watching the flames. His tail twitched once, like it knew something was coming. The next morning he called a meeting. Small. Only 5 men. Marco was one of them. They sat in the west room. No windows. No signals. Nothing leaked from there. Angelo entered last. He didn't sit. He just looked around. Then nodded at Nico. Nico pressed a button. The screen lowered. The footage rolled. The box. The figure. The time. Then the freeze frame on the limp. And the zoom on the stance. Marco's hands twitched. Slight, but enough. Angelo walked over. Glass still in his hand. He didn't raise his voice. Is there something you want to tell me, Marco? Silence. 5 seconds. 10. Then Marco spoke. His voice was too soft. "Boss, I swear, I didn't." "You didn't what?" Angelo cut in, eyes sharp. Marco swallowed. "I was told to leave the side gate open that night. That's all. Just that. I didn't know what was being dropped." "Who told you?" Another pause. Then a name. A name Angelo hadn't heard in a long time. Vatic. From the east. Black market player. Trafficker. Ghost. Gone for years. Angelo's stomach turned like a knife had twisted it. Marco was shaking now. "I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't know it would end up with you." Angelo stepped closer. "You don't get to decide what I end up with." Marco lowered his eyes. "I'm sorry, boss. I didn't think it mattered." "You're wrong," Angelo whispered. "It matters more than anything." He didn't kill Marco that day. He didn't raise his hand. Didn't make a scene. He simply walked out. And behind him, Nico followed with a quiet nod. Marco would be handled. No mess. No second chance. Just silence. That night, Angelo sat in the study. The glass untouched again. Whisk curled in the cigar box. Eyes closed for once. But his mind wouldn't rest. They had planted the kitten. Wanted it close to him. Someone thought they were smart. Someone thought they could slip a shadow into his world. He lit a cigarette. Watched the smoke rise. Watched Whisk sleep. And then, out loud, barely above a whisper, he said, "You were never just a stray." Whisk stirred. Lifted its head. Looked at him. Then chirped. Soft. One note. And in that sound, Angelo heard 1,000 questions. He just didn't know which one to answer first. The night outside was quiet. Too quiet for Angelo's liking. Inside the study, the fire whispered softly, low flames licking the logs, shadows stretching tall across the walls. Whisk was curled in his usual place, nestled inside the cigar box like a secret stashed between pages of an old book. The kitten had one eye closed, one eye open, as if it couldn't decide whether it should sleep or watch. Angelo sat with a drink in his hand and a storm in his chest. He couldn't shake it. Not the limp, not Marco, not the footage, and not the fact that someone had made Whisk. Built it, planted it. No part of this had been random. No stray cat, no kind twist of fate. It was a setup, a long one, a quiet one, and now he wanted the truth. All of it. By sunrise, he was behind the wheel again, driving through the back streets, past rusted gates and slumped warehouses, past broken fences and forgotten doors, back to the one man who might have answers, Petrov, the vet who knew things no vet was supposed to know. The laundromat still looked like a grave. Same cracked windows. Same dead neon sign flickering a ghost of blue. Angelo parked, tucked Whisk into his coat, and knocked 3 times on the metal door. A buzz. Then the door clicked. He walked inside. Petrov was waiting in the same cold room. Gloves on. Eyes sharp. "You again," he muttered. "I was hoping you wouldn't come back." Angelo said nothing. He just pulled Whisk out from his coat and set the kitten on the table again. Whisk sat calmly, tail wrapped around its paws. Those wide black eyes blinked once. Then silence. The air felt heavier. Angelo crossed his arms. "Start talking." Petrov raised one brow. "About what?" "About what this thing is. About where it came from. About why someone would plant it under my nose like a present wrapped in fur." Petrov sighed. Then walked to the wall, pulled down a file. Not paper. Not digital. A box. Locked. He opened it. Inside were sealed envelopes, old photos, and one USB drive. He tossed the drive on the table. "You won't like the answer." Angelo leaned forward. "I'm not here to like anything." The screen blinked awake. Footage played. Grainy. Dark. A lab. Not a normal one. Concrete walls. No signs. No faces. Only gloves. Only creatures. Angelo stared. In one of the cages was something small. Fur. Tail. But wrong. Its body was too long. Its eyes too wide. Its paws too clean. Whisk. Or something like it. Petrov's voice came soft now, low like a man telling a bedtime story with teeth. They were built in pieces. Parts taken from animals, others from creatures we couldn't identify. Some said jungle cats. Some said bats. Others, we didn't ask. Angelo didn't blink. Built for what? Petrov looked at him, dead serious. For war. For silence. For death without warning. He pointed at the screen. They were made to bond fast, to imprint like ducklings. First thing they see, they follow. Grow attached. Trust deep. Then what? Then, when the time is right, they kill. The word dropped like ice water on steel. Angelo looked at Whisk. The kitten was still sitting there, unmoving, innocent, or pretending. Petrov went on. Most didn't last. They died young. Couldn't survive the blending. Couldn't handle the speed of growth. The minds broke before the bones did. But this one, he gestured to Whisk, eyes narrowing. This one's different. Angelo's voice was quiet now. Why? Petrov leaned closer to Whisk, stared into those deep eyes. It didn't follow instinct. Not completely. It should have turned already. Should have shown signs. But it hasn't. He turned to Angelo, face pale, but not panicked. Just shaken. Maybe you changed it. Maybe it bonded too well. Maybe it sees you as something more than a target. Or... He paused, letting the weight of the word hang there like smoke. Maybe it's waiting. Angelo felt something twist in his chest. Not fear. Not yet. But something colder. The idea that he had picked up a ghost wrapped in kitten skin. That every night it curled on his chest. It was learning him. That every click, every chirp, every stare was a calculation. He looked at Whisk. The kitten tilted its head, then licked its paw. So normal, so soft, so impossible. What do I do? Angelo asked. Petrov didn't answer at first. Then, slowly, you've already done it. What does that mean? You picked it up. It bonded. It chose. Now, there's no putting it back in a cage. Angelo looked down. Whisk blinked, then crawled over to his hand, and sat on it, tail wrapped, eyes steady, heart pulsing slow. Trusted him. And somehow he trusted it too. Petrov watched, eyes tired, like he'd seen something like this once before, and it hadn't ended well. He whispered, "It's not yours to keep, but it's yours now." Angelo stood, lifted Whisk gently, held him to his chest. Soft weight, warmth, quiet. He looked Petrov in the eye. "If anyone comes for him, they won't," Petrov cut in, "because they're scared of it." Then, quieter, "Just like I am." As Angelo left the lab, the rain had stopped, but the clouds still hung low. In his arms, Whisk made a sound. Purr. No clicks, no chirps, just a soft, steady purr. And Angelo realized something that chilled him more than anything else. Whisk wasn't acting like it was trained. Whisk was acting like it belonged. The mansion felt heavier that night. Even the air tasted different. Dry, tight, like it was holding its breath. Angelo sat alone in the upper office, the one nobody entered unless asked. No fireplace here. No soft chairs. Just stone walls, one long steel desk, and silence thick enough to chew. Whisk was in the corner. Not inside a box. Not curled on a pillow. Just sitting. Still. Watching. Like it always did. His tail flicked once. its head tilted just enough to remind Angelo that it was paying attention. Below, in the basement 2 floors down, Marco was waiting. Tied. Bloody. Still breathing. That wouldn't last much longer. Angelo didn't feel hate. Didn't feel rage. What he felt was colder. Betrayal. And something worse than that, uncertainty. He stood. Reached for the gun. Didn't load it. It was already ready. Whisk followed him with its eyes but didn't move. No chirp. No purr. Just that glassy, dark stare. Angelo held it for 1 moment longer. Then whispered, "Don't wait up." The walk to the basement was slow. Each step felt louder than it should. The kind of steps that echo inside the chest, not just the walls. Nico stood outside the door. No words. Just a nod and a key. Angelo unlocked the heavy steel. Inside, Marco was strapped to the chair. Wrists tied. Face swollen. A bruise bloomed over his cheek like something rotten under his skin. He looked up when Angelo entered. Eyes red, but still holding on to something. Fear maybe, or regret. Angelo pulled a chair across the floor. Sat opposite him. Gun on the table between them. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. "Who told you to bring that thing?" Marco blinked slow. Swallowed hard. Said nothing. Angelo tapped the gun once. The metal sound was louder than the question. "I'm not here to guess, Marco. Don't make me ask twice." Marco's voice cracked. "I didn't know what it was." "That wasn't the question." Marco looked down. Hands shaking now. A bead of sweat slid down the side of his face. "It was a job," he whispered. "Small job. Said I just had to leave the gate open. Make sure a package got close to the boss. Said it wouldn't hurt nobody. Said it would blend in." "Who is they?" Marco hesitated. Angelo leaned in, eyes hard as stone. "Say the name, or I paint the floor with what's left of your loyalty." Marco closed his eyes, then said it. "Vatic." That name again. Like a ghost. Vatic. Gone for years. Black market. Chemical deals. Animal testing. A name tied to whispers and sealed files. "I thought he was dead," Marco added quickly. "But they said he's back. Said he's working through buyers overseas now. Testing new products. High-end weapons dressed like pets. Tools that bond with targets. Study them. Then strike." Angelo didn't flinch. He just stared at Marco like he was reading a confession written in skin. "They said it wouldn't do anything unless it had to." Said it would decide on its own. Learn the target. Bond first. Then maybe kill. Marco's voice cracked again. "I didn't know it would survive. I didn't know it would bond with you." The room went quiet. Angelo stood up. Walked to the side table. Opened a drawer. Pulled out a long cloth. Wrapped the gun. Slow. Methodical. Marco watched. Breathing faster now. Sweat gathering at his temples. "I didn't mean to hurt you, boss. I swear. It was just a job. Just a setup. I didn't know it would work. I didn't know." The shot cut him off. One clean sound. One red bloom. One body slumped back in a chair that didn't care who sat in it last. Angelo stood still for a second. Then set the wrapped gun back in the drawer. Upstairs, the study was silent. He walked in. Closed the door. Whisk was still in the corner. It looked up as he entered. And this time, it blinked. Slow. Soft. Angelo crossed the room. Sat back in his chair. Whisk padded forward. Jumped onto the table. No sound. No hesitation. Sat near his hand. Pressed one paw gently against his wrist. Warm. Light. Trusting. Angelo didn't move. But inside, something cracked. Not fear. Not quite. But something close. He looked at the kitten. Really looked. "Was this your job?" he whispered. Whisk tilted its head. Angelo smiled. A cold smile. Tired one. Because if it was, "You're late." That night he didn't sleep. He sat in the study with the fire low, the lights soft, and Whisk curled in the crook of his arm. And every time the wind knocked against the windows, every time the shadows moved just a little too far across the floor, Angelo wondered, not if Whisk could kill, but when. And more than that, if when the time came, would he let it? The clock in the study didn't tick. It hadn't worked in years. Still, Angelo kept it on the shelf, frozen at 2:47. He didn't know why. Maybe because it reminded him that some things stop, and the world doesn't notice. That night, though, he noticed everything. The creak of the leather chair, the way the fire sighed when it dropped low, the soft sound of Whisk breathing, curled at the end of the desk. He hadn't touched his drink, hadn't moved from the chair in hours, and he hadn't slept, not even for a second. He watched Whisk stretch gently. The small body moved like smoke. Quiet, elegant, unreal. The kitten padded across the table, leaped onto the arm of Angelo's chair, then climbed into his lap. Curled there, head resting on his forearm. His tail flicked once. Eyes closed. Safe. Angelo brushed one hand over the soft fur. He could feel the heartbeat. Still steady. Still warm. He thought about pulling away. About standing up and walking out the door without it. But he couldn't. Not yet. At sunrise, the sky outside turned pale blue. The first light spilled through the tall windows like someone cracking the world open. Angelo rose. Slow. Careful not to wake Whisk. But Whisk opened its eyes anyway. No noise. No complaint. Just that familiar stare. Like it already knew. Like it had been waiting for this too. In the kitchen, Angelo warmed milk. Same as the first night. He poured it into a shallow white bowl and set it on the table. Whisk padded over and drank without a sound. Measured. Calm. As always, Angelo leaned on the counter, watching. His chest felt too tight. Not from anger. Not from fear. Just something heavier. Something called goodbye. He went back upstairs and opened the hidden drawer in the study. Pulled out the flannel shirt. The same one he wrapped Whisk in the night he found it. It still smelled faintly of smoke and rain. He folded it neatly, placed it inside the box. Then placed the box in the passenger seat. Whisk climbed in without being told. It didn't cry, didn't resist. It just sat down and looked at him. The drive was silent. No guards, no convoy. Just Angelo behind the wheel and Whisk in the box beside him. The road ahead looked longer than usual. The sky above stayed cloudy like it knew something was wrong. No music. No radio. Just the sound of the tires on wet asphalt and the wind slipping past. Angelo gripped the wheel tighter every mile. His mind replayed everything. The alley. The fire. The blood. The quiet stairs. The way Whisk never blinked. The purr that came too late but not too little. He didn't park in front of the vet clinic. He parked 3 blocks away. The rest of the walk he carried the box in both hands. It didn't feel heavy, but it pulled at his arms like something that didn't want to be set down. The city was just waking up. Shops opening. Lights flicking on. No one looked twice at the man with the box. But if they did, they would have seen his jaw tight. Eyes darker than usual. Heart somewhere in his throat. Petrov was waiting at the back entrance. Same coat. Same gloves. But his eyes looked softer this time. "I made the call," he said. "They're waiting inside." Angelo didn't reply. He followed him through the door, down the same cold hallway, into the same room. 2 men in black suits stood near the far wall. Not police. Not soldiers. Something else. They didn't speak. Just nodded. Petrov opened a clean case on the table. Patted inside. It looked more like a crib than a cage. Angelo placed the box down beside it, lifted Whisk out slowly. The kitten didn't squirm, didn't chirp. It just let him hold it one last time. He looked into those black eyes, still endless, still silent, still full of something he would never fully understand. Then he whispered, "You're not what I thought." His hand stroked once between the ears. "But you're more than what they made." Whisk blinked. Then, for the very last time, he said, "Stay alive, Whisk," and he placed the kitten into the case. Soft, gentle, final. As he walked out, the wind picked up. It brushed against his face, sharp and cool. He didn't look back, didn't pause, didn't speak. He just stepped into the morning like a man leaving behind something that would never stop following him. And just before the door shut behind him, a sound. Small, soft, one last chirp. Angelo didn't turn, but his fingers curled once in the air, tight, like he had just let go of something he was never meant to hold in the first place.
Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of this story. If you enjoyed this story, I promise you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more thrilling as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.